And we've got Simon Chen from Ramius and Sylvie Croteau from Ad Hoc Research talking about the modern social online qualitative research. I've had the honor of knowing Simon for a few years now. Ramius does some really interesting stuff in the community arena, and Sylvie has done work with him. So help me in welcoming them on. And
okay. Thanks, Lenny. And thanks to all the MRMW organizers for giving us a chance to come on up and talk to y'all. And thank you for joining us. I know that I left before the rock, paper, scissors, so I'm curious to see who's got the new iPad here today. No? Okay. All right. Congratulations. What we're going to do today is, you actually aren't going to see too much of me, mainly because we realize this is a 20-minute presentation. We're going to spend most of our time reviewing with you a research study that we had done working with a short-term online research community. And it was involving a national Canadian grocer in Canada called Sylvie's. Sylvie would do most of the work to review with you what we learned in doing this piece of work. But what I'll do is set the context for who we are and why we collaborated. Oh, clicker. Thanks. Part of the reasons that how Lenny and I had met is understanding a bit about where Ramius has come from. And so we are actually a non-traditional vendor, software vendor to the market research industry. Our background is in building online community social network software for large enterprise. So it's organizations like the ones you see on the screen who often were using our tools for things like ad hoc team collaboration, to also meet things like learning and knowledge objectives, like building online communities of interest or communities of practice. Certainly, one of the use cases that we had often seen was to build ongoing customer communities, which companies use to engage with their stakeholders for insight purposes. So over the past couple of years, we began to do more and more work with folks like you, market research agencies like Sylvie represents from Ad Hoc Research, and also their end customer clients in market research who are interested in using our tools primarily because of the fact that it offered a consumer feel of an interface, something very modern that a lot of our clients had come to us to use. But of course, we are used to building up for collaboration for ongoing community, not so much in the research space. We learned a lot in doing a lot of these projects, and we heard a lot of feedback from folks like Sylvie. And what we took away from these things is, we're a software company that builds, we're a SaaS provider. We build white label solutions, but deliver it on the cloud. So when we iterate these softwares, we take a lot of feedback from our customers. And what we ended up doing was taking that feedback and building a new online qual tool, which we released back in the fall. So we're always interested in seeing how these are going to work. So we collaborated with an agency like Ad Hoc and Sobeys to be able to go and test some of the things that we had learned in developing our recollective product. So here's a bit of Sobeys, large grocery retailer in Canada. And so here, I'm just going to point out a few things that we heard from a lot of people like you when it comes to building up tools that have community and social features for research purposes. So it's an online technology, so it had to be a system that could be delivered for today, the desktop, but certainly also work very well and easily shift into a tablet form or a smartphone format. It had to have that intuitive, friendly interface that you're familiar with. So we used to hear a lot of the terms like, can you make it look not old school? I think that was often the deliverable that we had to put together. So it's very much that beautiful, friendly, slick interface that is workable not only for the end user, but also for the researcher managing a lot of the tools. It had to have a lot of features that you're familiar with. So often it begins with a lot of the bulletin board-like features that you might like, but it had to also have some of the social features that could be activated. So things like the ability to go and have activity streams to be able to socialize some of the comments if it was appropriate in your study. Even something simple as the way that discussion forums often looked. You often will request that threaded structure, but a lot of folks today, to encourage participation, like that kind of friendly conversational tone that you see with Facebook. Rather than deepening threads over multiple lines, it's something which is the kind of look that you see there. But then the other part of it is that we want to make sure that we had tools that actually helped researchers do the work. So simple things that we would observe that researchers would end up coding a lot of the things manually. So we built in tools to allow people to help easily online with where the responses are, manually code into an automatic code book and report very quickly to get access to those insights very quickly. So these are the kind of things that we built into the platform, but we know that it's with folks, the expertise of qualitative researchers like yourselves, in conjunction working with the client to meet the kinds of insight needs that you're looking for. So I thought Sylvie would be great to come and talk to you a bit about that this morning.
Thank you, Simon. So I'm here this morning to tell you a story. I'm here to tell you the story of our first MROC. We had been talking about it for a long time. We'd been to presentations like this on MROCs, but we really were looking for an opportunity to actually do this ourselves, get some learnings from this, and I'm here this morning to show you some of the learnings that we got from our first MROC experience. So I'm going to start with an overview of the project. First of all, the project was in French, held in Quebec. We called the project Le Comptoir. Le Comptoir in French means the counter, as in the kitchen counter. It also means a department in a grocery store. And in French, it has the sound of telling a story. So that's what we wanted people to do, to tell us the story of how they shop, how their daily grocery shopping habits. So here's the story of what we did. First of all, we had this study for Sobeys where we had to conduct traditional face-to-face focus groups. So it started that way in April 2012. We held focus groups in areas where Walmart supercenters had recently been introduced. They're fairly new to Canada, so wanting to find out the dynamics of that, how people were shopping in these areas, how their shopping habits were changing. So traditional focus groups with people who shopped at IGA, that chain of grocery stores, and who had transitioned to Walmart. That was the first step. Then what we did in May 2012, we asked people who participated in the traditional face-to-face focus group to join us in an MROC. We also recruited people specifically for the MROC with the same profile as the traditional groups. And we proceeded in June with Le Comptoir, our MROC. We went all out. What we wanted to do is we really wanted to test this out, have a bunch of activities, see what worked, see what didn't work. It was really our opportunity to experiment. So we had 25 activities for participants to do, held over the course of 2 weeks. Discussion, qualitative activities, questionnaire type activities. So very wide range of activities that we wanted to try out with these people. And we're right now currently doing the analysis of the data. We have quite a lot, and we're in that process right now. Okay, so let's talk about the learnings from the MROC. One of the most important learnings is that we got the most when we treated this not as a traditional market study, but really as a community. So when we left things open-ended, when we gave participants leeway, is when we got the most out of this. So, of course, with traditional qualitative, which is a lot of what we do, you've got some open-ended questioning, but the researcher always provides directions. You have a guide, you have a line of questioning, you have very definite objectives that you need to reach within time constraint. Often we find that we're trying to get as much as we can out of a 2-hour group, trying to cover as many topics as we can. So we've got those time constraints very much in traditional qualitative. And we are still going to do traditional qualitative in the future. That's most of our business, and I think it will remain that way. But when we'll be thinking about exploratory research, longitudinal research, examining a process that goes on from day to day, based on our experience, I think MROC will be a tool that we'll be using for some of our studies. We found that MROCs are a broader quest for information than what we have with traditional qualitative. A lot of it has to do with the time constraints. There's much less of that with MROCs. There's virtually no limit to how much participants can contribute, as opposed to a 2-hour group with 8 people where you have a set amount of airtime per participant. With this type of study, each person gets much more airtime. They're not infringing on others with their participation. If somebody wants to be very invested in the discussion, they're absolutely free to do so, and they're not taking up the time of somebody else. So that was a major advantage for us, and I'll explain why. So we had some specific questions. We also had some very open-ended queries, and we did find a great difference in the types of response we obtained with each. So specific questions is more of what we're used to with traditional research. With specific questions, you get varying depth of answers, few surprises as compared to what we had in the face-to-face focus groups. We got pretty much the same information with our specific questions, and we, of course, got specific answers. When we open it up, the more open-ended queries, we got more depth, more creativity, more personalization. So taking a step back, letting participants kind of take control of the community really made a difference in the type of results we obtained and what we could get from this MROC. I'm going to show you examples of what I mean. One very simple exercise that we did is we asked participants to use images to express how they felt about Walmart. We did this 2 ways. One way was, here is a bank of 50 to 60 images that we're proposing to you. Choose an image and express to us why this represents how you feel about Walmart. Here's an example of what we got. Okay, so with that bank of images, a picture of clocks, it's because of time with Walmart close to my home. I save a lot of time. Okay, that's a valid answer, thank you. What happened when we opened it up and when we told people, choose any image that you'd like from anywhere, this is the type of result that we obtain. So more depth, more creativity. We've got Squiddly Diddly here, talking about how Walmart offers a range of products, how you can buy everything there, it saves time. Like Squiddly Diddly, Walmart is a large, friendly department store kind of character. Another example of the differences when you give people the range of images, when you give them more direction, a picture of dice. This is about the supermarket that's called Super C. Going to Super C, I know I won't be surprised. I know what I'll find. To me, playing dice is a bit boring. We know we'll find specials, and that's it. Okay, so interesting answer. We certainly got something out of that. But when, once again, we open it up, we've got somebody who posts a picture from their own dinner party, who tells us something a bit more personal about shopping for food, having friends over, who tells us a story, and that's what we want, people telling us stories. So definitely more fruitful to do it this way. Now, this slide to me is very important because it's where we got the more learning when we opened it up to participants. We told participants, just if you'd like to launch discussions, launch your own discussions. We've got a place for that. And we'll see what kind of results we obtain with that. As a moderator, as somebody who's been moderating traditional focus groups for years, stepping back from that role and handing the moderation to somebody else, letting participants moderate their own discussion is something that's very different, a little scary, didn't quite know what we would obtain with that, but it turned out to be the most fruitful, the richest part of the MROC when we just let participants take control. And we really got to the heart of what matters to participants when we just let them choose the topics that matter to them. So here are some of the discussions that they launched. 28 discussions were launched with about 500 comments responding to those discussions. So do you think Walmart is placing enough local products on the shelves? Should Walmart offer a points card? What do you think of the greeters? Should Walmart review its checkout procedure? These were all topics that we did not have in mind, but that were important to participants and generated quite a great deal of discussions. So definitely things we would not have gotten to given our initial objectives. So opening it up paid off.
3 minutes.
Various response modes. The ability for participants to answer in different ways was very useful. Text, images, video. They can respond in any way they would like to our questions. And 20% of people selected to answer through video at first, tapered off a little bit, went to 10% towards the end of the 2 weeks. And some people were very, very invested in production of video. We had one fellow who went as far as filming it himself, looking at the flyers from Walmart, who filmed himself at Walmart. Remember, this was not a study for Walmart. This was for a competitor. So who went to the store, who interviewed a salesperson. I'm just going to show you about 10 seconds of what he did.
Voyez-vous, c'est de ça que je vous parlais ce matin. Dans la circulaire, on annonce bien 24 rouleaux pour 11,97. Puis quand on arrive dans les allées, c'est 16 rouleaux pour 11,97. C'est pas la première fois que vous faites ça, vous faites ça à chaque fois.
So this is the kind of depth, the kind of lengths that people went to provide information. So very involved. One advantage we found to the MROC was being able to go with the flow, being able to adjust activity, to tweak things as we went along to follow emerging trends in the discussion. So in the end, what we got is many opportunities for exploration. Because it is less time constrained, we were able to delve more deeply into the objectives to just open it up, venture into more avenues. What we got in the end is rich data. Of course, with rich data, what you have is more complex analysis. We're still at the analysis stage. Lots and lots of information, probably more than we would have obtained through face-to-face. So that's our next challenge. So to finish it off, additional success factors that we found for MROCs, things that really worked for us or things that we would do differently next time. First, keep activities short. Those were the most successful. Consider extending your timeline to be able to go with the flow, to adjust between activities. Provide feedback for participants so you can build upon learnings as you go along. Think about different ways to extract insights. So look at objectives in different ways, plan different activities to get to that information. And finally, build in visible activity-based compensation that actually made a big difference in motivation and participation. Instead of being incented for an entire study, people were being incented $5, $10, up to $25 for the different activities that we had planned for them, and that went a long way into getting them to participate more and more to the different activities.
One of the things that you mentioned is, when you open things up, and what I was thinking is like, I can see that, but when you open everything up, it's less structured. You may get more creativity and new things. Do you also get things that are totally out there that you cannot use? Because it seems to me that you would get more information, but at the same time, there would be more time at the back end to try to figure out what to use.
Yes. When I say we went with open-ended questioning, we did have the more structured, the more specific questions, and we did have that form where it was just free form. And that was one of our concerns. How much direction do people need? Would we get relevant answers? Would we get a lot of rubbish that we would have to sort through? And what we found is mostly very, very relevant topics, very relevant contributions. So I think what we learned is to trust participants, to stay within the range of topics. That was an important lesson for us. We did get some rubbish, some stuff that we're not going to be able to use, that's not That's not going to contribute much to the study, but and that takes a little bit more time to just filter through that. That is a component. But I was actually surprised by the relevance of what people said and did once we opened the doors and gave them that forum. I think one thing that helped is when we had the open-ended discussion, when participants could launch their own discussions, they were paid $10 to launch a discussion if they had participation in that discussion. So that was kind of a way of ensuring that they did something relevant.
So, Simon, the Ramius platform is built with a slightly different model in mind. You kind of like Google, you didn't come to market research originally, so you started doing something different and then started adapting. What kind of drove that from a technology standpoint, and where's that go?
And part of it is actually, this is probably a conversation when we first met. We talked a bit about this, and Lenny talked, oh, you have this new platform, what's the gist of it? I said, well, we kind of dumbed down community and social features from what we normally would have built to make it appropriate for what researchers actually would want. So remember, we come from a background of building up collaboration and community platforms for business. Our latest tool, our 6 Enterprise tool, is full-on social networking system. So it is meant, we build everything there for all about engagement, sharing, collaboration. We build in permission structures to make things appropriate. If you're a researcher up on here and you're trying to do something for a week-long study, just think about some of the things that you're concerned a bit about. You don't want this open platform where people can begin to go figure out who their study counterparts would be. Things like this. So what we end up doing was to streamline a lot of those social features, but make sure that a researcher has the ability to go and pick and choose how and when is it appropriate to use things like this. So it's one thing when you're trying to build a week-long study for 20 people where you may want to make it much more focused and structured in the way that things are delivered. But we also will see brands run year-long studies for, whether it be an engaged community or even a standard research study, but just a longer period of time, where they begin to open up some of these features because they're trying to encourage that peer-to-peer sharing. So a lot of that learning really is coming from the fact that when we talk about community, we're used to doing continuously fully engaged communities with community managers that manage these things, and that they use those social features. I think a lot of it is streamlining it for MR. And the big thing that we ended up doing was to also think a bit about you as researchers. What tools can we provide? What workflows can we do to manage the way that you would like to work? So it's not just a matter of a pretty looking tool, it is to think a bit about a solution appropriate for researchers. So those are the two things. So I think that gentleman Google talked a bit about the idea of looking at it from the point of view of the end user. We did that, and we do that, but we also have to think a bit about, well, who is the buyer, right? So we're not the ones trying to think a bit about, we have to build something for the end user. We're not responsible for that experience. We are a part of that process. But how do we make sure that Sylvie looks great when she is managing the research experience for that end study participant? So that's it's a partnership kind of a thing that we do.
All right, so Sylvie, when you were thinking about doing this type of work, and sorry I'm not talking in this, what features were most, and this isn't a sales pitch for Ramius, but looking at that from a client need standpoint and a project specification standpoint, what features really drove the process for you? What were the things that were most important that you'd be able to deliver in order to complete the project overall?
What we were looking for is to see what we could do that we could not do with a face-to-face methodology. So having a range of activities from which people could pick, approaching the same objectives, but giving participants alternative ways of responding, that was very important. The ability to use text, to use images, to use video, I think was very important because people like to respond in different ways, and we get varying levels of depth with the different modes of response. So that was a feature that was very important to us. The ability also to use the Recollective platform as a portal from which we could send participants to various areas. We sent them to our web survey server, brought them back to the platform. So merged different methodologies and brought everybody back to the Recollective portal.
Okay. So that multimodal, the ability to manage multimodal through one centralized platform logistically was one of the key features. Okay. More questions? Yes.
Hi, Mike Burba from Reality Check. So really good presentation. Our clients get a lot of the same findings, so thank you. My question is about the data, and I know you said you're still maybe going through this process, but what we see is that a lot of data gets generated, both in the open-ended text and video and images, and the challenge that our clients have and we have on the research side is how do you go through that, that big heap of data? So I wonder if you're looking at tools to do that, or if Ramius is doing that, or what approach you're using.
Okay, I want to respond to that, but I'd also like Simon to talk about his coding tools that are integrated in Recollective that we're using right now. One of the elements we found is, yes, there is a large amount of information, and one reaction we got from our clients is, when we watch focus group, we sit behind the mirror, we see what people are saying, we kind of get the gist of what's going on, we kind of know what the results are going to be. When we've got 25 activities over 2 weeks, all that amount of information coming to us, it's hard to get an intuitive, spontaneous sense of what's going on. So that's definitely one of the issues. In terms of analyzing the data, we are using coding tools that are embedded in the Recollective software, and I'll let Simon respond to that part.
Yeah, I alluded to it a bit earlier, I might have missed it, but the gist of it was that we actually, in our old days when we were working off our existing platforms, we would have a lot of requests from you for, could we get transcripts? And then one day we decided to just actually follow through how a researcher actually was working with these transcripts and do a lot of this work. And I think one of them actually sent me back this whole really complicated tool where they import things into Excel, move it into Acrobat, draw up color schemes to code things, and then have an intern cut and paste things back into reports. And then we thought, oh, well, if you're trying to do that, we can build it into the tool. So what we ended up doing is we make use of a lot of modern web browser technologies. So one of the things you're able to do is go right into, say, whatever the feedback is, could be a text-based piece, and basically just take your mouse, highlight the text, drops it into a codebook that you could have built, and then we build reporting tools and search tools in the back end to make it easy to report. And we built that because we know that the initial phase of a lot of the work that we do with our clients has been small, low number of participant studies for very short periods of time. So researchers like you want to actually hand code and manually code these sorts of things. We have seen the other sides of the kinds of projects we see it's the 500, the 1,000 participant types of communities that might sit into there that might go on for 6 months, 9 months, 1 year, or continuously going on. So sometimes we'll end up working with, I don't want to name some vendors, although there's I think 1 or 2 here that do text analytics-based pieces. So for them, it's a matter of the client will manually code some things, but then the other things will just work with a third-party vendor to export into tools like this so that you can now use their reporting capabilities to go in and do it. And the big ones that they're doing differently is that the research vendors are beginning to look at things like sentiment. So it depends on the project. When they begin to care a bit about, not only it's not just a sounding board, but it's a matter of, did I move the needle in a year's time? Then they're beginning to look at tools from these third-party providers to provide that kind of piece. For us, we haven't picked one company that we end up working with. It's just a matter of making sure that we have the capability of exporting this stuff or building an API that they could use or vice versa. So it's an iterative process. We work with every instance that we work with for projects up on here. We're trying to be a technology supplier, so we focus on listening. How can we do this thing better, and what can we learn for the next one? So a combination of those two things.
Hi. It's not actually a question, it's just a build on that question and that previous point. Around the coding of data, particularly, and as you said, kind of some of these bigger communities, thousands of people over an extended period of time with huge amounts of data. And I think there's going to be a convergence between some of the tools that are around social media analytics and online community data, and actually applying some of those social media analytic tools to data that we're capturing in private insight communities. Yeah. Because those social media analytic tools are perfectly set up for processing sentiment, keywords, topics, themes, trends, but also being able to drill into data and visualizing data in a really nice way. So I think that's what will happen, is those two things will come together.
To pick up some of the themes that Lenny talked about around big data, I mean, our tools have been building large-scale enterprise collaboration platforms. So often enterprises want to have an understanding of what is our workforce working on, what are they doing, what do they care a bit about. So a lot of business intelligence tools have already been used for platforms like this, whether it be an intranet or a tool like what we would offer. in order to mine these sorts of things. So it's a new earthing, new data sources for MR, but it is certainly things which research or existing enterprise has been working with for multiple years, that sort of thing. Is how to get good at it, I think, is the hard part.
I think we'll get more into that on the panel on social media this afternoon as well. So that'll be a great topic. Thank you guys very, very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.